In the last video, I did not cover 2 different types / 3 different types of descriptive statistics with numerical measures. One of them was the mean growth rate. Another one is percentiles. And then with percentiles, we can actually be more specific and look at quartiles. So what we have then is a mean growth rate is going to be different than the arithmetic mean, which is just adding everything up and dividing by the quantity. It's going to be a geometric mean, which means we multiply everything together and then take the root of the quantity of elements that we have. Okay? We take the root of the quantity of the elements that we have. So if I've got 5 elements, okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then I'm going to take a 5th root. If I've got 12 elements, then I'm going to take a 12th root. And one of the ways that you can do that on your calculator is to raise this answer. If you just multiply, then you're going to raise that answer to the 1 over the root that you're taking. Okay, so in this case, it would be this product, which is x1 times x2, and so on, all the way till we get to the final one. That's an n, sorry. And we're going to raise that to the 1 over n power. So those are called rational exponents. Now, that's the mean growth factor. That's the mean growth factor. In order to find the mean growth rate, we're going to take one more little snip and figure out what's going on. So we're going to take this answer that we get. So we're going to take the mean growth factor, subtract 1 from it, and I'll explain that in a second, and then multiply it by 100%, which means we're going to multiply it by 100. Okay? So here's the deal. All of this is going to be working in decimal speak rather than percentage speak. So when you get this answer, it's going to be over 100 or over 1. Okay, so it's either going to be over 100% or over 1 if it's growing. It's going to be between 0 and 1 if it's decreasing. Okay, if it's not growing, if it's falling. So this answer will be a decimal somewhere above 1 or below 1. Well, if your answer is exactly 1, so 1 minus 1 is 0, then there's no growth. There's no growth at all. And so we're using decimal answers here. And I'm going to give you some examples in the next video. The next thing that we want to do is percentiles, and then we're going to fine-tune that into quartiles. All right. So people hear percentiles and they think percentages. No. Percentages are parts of a whole, and then we figure out by multiplying by 100 what the percentage is. So for instance, if you are taking a test and you get 15 out of 20 on your test, then what I would do is take 15 divided by 20, and I would get 0.75. We'll multiply that times 100, and you get 75%. So you got 75% of the answers correct versus 25% of the questions wrong. Percentiles are different. It's a ranking. So think about height. If you have 5 people, then you're going to take the shortest person. Then next to them, you're going to put the next tallest person, and then the next tallest person. So you'll have this person, then this person, this person, this person, and then this person. Okay, and so we're measuring their heights right here. And so you can see that it's a ranking instead of a percentage. A percentage is part of a whole, whereas a ranking is if 100 people stood in line, where would you be? Okay, so if you ever think about going to the doctor when you were little, they would talk about your percentile as far as your height and your percentile as far as your weight. So if they would say that you were in the 95th percentile for height, that would mean if you took 100 people and lined them up, you would be the 95th person as far as height goes. You would be pretty much one of the tallest ones there. Okay? If you were told that you were in the 10th percentile for weight, that means that out of 100 people, you would be person number 10. So it is a ranking. Now we can get more specific with our percentiles and talk about quartiles. And for quartiles, we're just going to measure everything into fourths. Okay, so if I've got all of my data, and I'm just going to use a big rectangle. Okay, so if I do this, and I'm assuming that everything is balanced evenly, this is the first 25%. So the 25th percentile is the first quartile because it represents the first 25%. Not percent, the first 25 items. Okay, so this would represent the first quartile. Now, what would the second quartile be? The second quartile would be, in order, it would be the 50th percentile, but it's going to represent the second quarter, okay, which also represents your median, because you put everything in order from smallest to biggest. So your 50th percentile, which is also your second quartile, is going to be your median every time. All right, so that's going to be my second quartile, which is also your median. And then your 75th percentile is going to be your third quartile, simply because you're taking everything in the list and you're measuring it out into quarters. You're putting a fourth of it you're grouping a fourth of it together, you're grouping a half of it together, you're grouping 3/4 of it together. And obviously the 100th percentile is going to be the largest value, so we don't even pay attention to it, because that's the same reason we don't do this one. It would be the smallest representation. That would be the biggest representation when it's all in order. So we're more concerned about the 25th, 50th, and 75th. So again, quartiles are specific percentiles. So I would say that the first quartile is the 25th percentile, because it's a quarter of the amount that I'm using. The second quartile, or the median, is the 50th percentile. The third quartile is going to be the 75th percentile. So what's our formula? Our formula for the percentile, okay, is going to be the percentile that I want over 100, and then I'm going to take that times the number of items that I have plus 1. So if I'm dealing with 5 items, this is going to be a 6. If I'm dealing with 17 items, this is going to be an 18. Okay, so that's how we're going to figure out our percentiles. Now, what about our quartiles? So this is where these numbers come into play. Here's the 25th. So 25 over 100 is a fourth. Okay, so the 25th, so I would end up with either 1/4 or 0.25 times the number that I've got in my percentiles. All right, that I'm trying to rank. All right, so with that is intro number 2. And for the third video, I'm just going to do 2 or 3 examples of each type, and then we'll be on to the next section.